Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Week 2 Recap Show. I am your host, Brandon. You can find me at the BG-C. I've brought on one half of Mannequin Chill. I brought on Scott Connor at Charles Chill FFB. Scott, how you doing this evening? He's just staring at me.
Brandon, awesome to be here. We talked about doing this pretty early on in the offseason, but finally got to fruition to do it after week 2. A lot to talk about. Thank you for jumping on with us, everybody in the community that's joined us. I see a bunch of our members already in here, and this is going out to everybody out there on X and out there on YouTube. So glad to be here, Brandon. Looking forward to this. It's going to be a weekly thing where we just come through and talk about what we're doing with a lot of the latest happenings, findings, news, and such in Dynasty. So glad to be here, my friend.
Yeah, so the whole idea of this show is really just to kind of break down the previous week's games, really, and what are the dynasty takeaways. Maybe there's some micro level things, but there might be some macro level things. So Scott and I are going to jump on. We might bring some guests along, might just be the two of us, but we're going to have a good time. So make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you drop your comments below, so that way we'll try to get to them. But we're going to try to get in and out of here before the game at 7 o'clock starts. So Scott, first question to you is, what is your major takeaway from week 2?
I mean, major takeaway from week 2, without getting into like a specific player. Obviously, we'll talk about the Burrow situation. I think it's already the any quarterback on a 2 deep strategy coming into play. And we have now 5 injured quarterbacks, if you count the guys that are out for sure this week. And then there's going to be probably more, but I mean, we're looking at 40 plus quarterbacks already starting a game, and it's only week 3, Brandon. After this week, you're going to have you had Mac Jones start this week, and we're looking at least 4 or 5 more backups starting this next week. I mean, that number is going to be 50 plus before you know it, because it's early. And having those strategies, I already got some deals done today involving Jake Browning, involving Carson Wentz. Like, there's deals to be had, and, roster construction, especially if you're tanking. And not to pick on you, but I've seen you pull off some really hardcore, like, micro grinding every roster spot, every edge. And, isn't this one of the lowest hanging fruit strategies in Dynasty? When you're out of it, just roster all of these backup quarterbacks when nobody else wants them. And then you are the convenience store that's open 24/7 when there's other things not open. You really want that drink, you really want that snack, you got to go through the tanking teams. It's one of those small edges, but I think that's the theme. Quarterback attrition already hitting us, and it's only week 3.
Yeah, we had discussion. We talked about this earlier inside the Destination Devi Discord. Sorry, DDFFB. You have one bullet: Carson Wentz or Mac Jones, knowing that probably both of them are going to start for at least a minimum of probably 3 weeks. We looked at JJ McCarthy's schedule. He's probably out through the bye week, which is week 6. So you're going to get at least 3 weeks of Carson Wentz. You're going to get probably 2 to 3 more weeks of Mac Jones. You got one bullet to fire. Which one you firing it on?
I think Mac Jones. It's got to be Mac Jones. I mean, he's been there a little bit longer, right? He's been there the entire offseason, all throughout OTAs, mini camp. He was the clear backup. Like, we don't know the full story between him and Shanny, but there was something there. You know what I mean? It's not an accident that this marriage is coming back to light, and, he's going to probably start multiple games. And I'm not saying he's Brock Purdy. I'm not saying that Brock Purdy is an element of the Shanahan offense, but it at least just reading between the tea leaves, it kind of feels like, if they had to go to Mac Jones for extended period of time, like, they're okay with it. I don't know if the Vikings are okay with Carson Wentz. I think that's one where it's like they're there because they have to be. They obviously traded for Sam Howell because they wanted a backup. They didn't like Sam Howell, so they got rid of him and literally signed Carson Wentz off the street in August. So to think they're as prepared as Mac Jones with Shanahan, who's been there for 6 months, and clearly there was some affinity there even before he signed there, I think it's easily him. He's got to be best backup in the league, don't you think? Besides the guys who can just put up nuclear numbers, like Malik Willis, if he starts, could put up a QB1 week. Tyson Bagent is another one. Like, I think he could put up numbers. But right now, Mac Jones is starting, and he's probably starting for another couple games. It's him easily.
CC asked, what about Browning? And the reason why I didn't keep Browning in here is because Browning's going to be, he's going to be out there for multiple months, right? Joe Burrow had the turf toe injury. He's going to have surgery. He's out for he's going to be there for multiple months, but you're going to probably have to pay a little bit more, Scott, would you imagine, for a Jake Browning over probably what you're going to have to pay for Carson Wentz or Mac Jones?
Yeah, I was able to sell a couple Brownings. So I was able to get a second for Browning. Had to add a player to get a 26 second for Browning. Then I was able to sell Browning for a 28 second. So I do think if you really want him, that's the price. I mean, you're not just buying 4 starts. You're potentially buying the rest of the season. You know what I mean? With good weapons. Like, say what you want. Like, at least he has an infrastructure where you're like, if I have to throw a shitty backup quarterback in there, I'd rather throw him in there than I would throw him on the Jets. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And Tyrod's another option. But I think because it's Browning, you're buying like 12 starts or more.
Minimum.
That costs more than a third. There's no future value here. You're buying 12 starts. If I told you you're going to get 12 starts out of a running back, Brandon, and then the guy's going to tear an ACL in week 17, do you care? You'd pay a second, right? Because you're getting 12 starts. So I think you got to pay a second. And a lot of people don't want to pay a second for Browning. They'd rather just patchwork the quarterback position together. And I don't hate that. You can get a guy cheaper, fine. But I think he does cost that because, he's starting the rest of the year. It's good insurance.
Yeah. And to circle back to before we jump into Steve-O's question, I have a team. We're in a league and I've got, 6 starting quarterbacks, Scott, now because of all the injuries and the team is completely punting, right? It is awful, but I now am the person who can control the market. And so now somebody like Scott, who's contending, if he falls into, I need a guy to replace my Joe Burrow, or I need a guy to replace potentially my Jaden Daniels, and I've got Marcus Mariota. Now I have the leverage. And I think that's part of the reason why you do it on a complete full tank, is because I don't care if I only have 2 running backs. I don't really care. I'm not trying to score points, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get value. So that way I can start to build a war chest down the road. If I can scoop up 2 seconds and 2/3 from those 4 cast off pieces, I just won, right? Like I just won a whole bunch of value that otherwise I could just sit and just pay my league dues and not really care too much. But
yeah, it's a tip for, just real quick. It's a tip for the teams that are rebuilding. You need to look at and a lot of people, when they rebuild, they actually don't pay attention to every spot on their roster. They draft a bunch of rookies and they'll just sit on them for a year. They don't churn and burn. They go, you know what? This Rocket Sanders isn't doing anything right now, but who cares? I'm tanking, so I'll just hold him. No, if he's wasting a roster spot, you need to be looking at what else in the very short term, the next week, the next 2 weeks, the next 4 weeks, can mature into something that turns into value. I mean, I could go pull up. Pull up. Everybody in here is in a league. Go look at the worst 2 teams in your league and tell me how many roster spots they're wasting. You know what I mean? Like, how many roster spots are they wasting on, like, still rostering Jalen Polk, players like that? Like, you need something to actually mature quickly. Not, I'll just turn up 2026 when the rookie draft gets here and decide to start rebuilding. Like, you need to be grinding every third, every fourth, every fab piece, every deal. You move players for fab, and you go, well, why do I need fab when I'm tanking? Well, that's $20 extra you can bid on the backup quarterback that gets hurt in week 12. You now get him, and then you can turn that player into a third. Like, it's every asset matters. Every roster spot matters way more when you're tanking, because you should be looking at every roster spot as a revenue vehicle or an asset building vehicle. You're contending. Okay. You might have different reasons for holding a bunch of backups that really there's only one world when you would need them. But for a tanker, it should be the other way around. You should be grinding every spot. You should be more active on tanking teams than contenders.
Yeah, and I would say on the flip side, from a contender standpoint, you're only really buying guys like Browning and Mariota if you're actually planning on capitalizing on them, right? You talked about this morning, with the war trap on Destination Dynasty, right? If you haven't tuned into that one, make sure you tune into that episode. But Scott talks about war trap, but I'm not going to give away who it was, but you can go watch. But that's kind of the whole, but that's the whole idea, right? Is that when you're buying these guys, you gotta be if you're buying these guys, Scott, you are buying them with the intent to start them. You're not buying them with the intent to sit on them and hope they go for 350 and 3 touchdowns so you can go try to quote unquote cash out on the next player. But how does
Yeah,
this
yeah.
yeah. So now with these guys being out, we've got also elite wide receivers that now are going to be potentially affected. How does this affect Jefferson and Chase? And even to some extent, to some extent, some of the other guys that are involved, right? Jaden Daniels. Now this is going to now affect Terry McLaurin, and there's other players that are still involved in some of these teams. How does this affect them?
I mean, you've seen what Jefferson's done with McCarthy, right? We have the Trinity tool. And if you haven't already tapped in, ddfantasyfootball.com, patreon.com/allgas. We're literally having this type of discussion that you hear on the stream 4 hours a day or more. So jump in, check those out. But, you already look at the Trinity, Brandon, on Jefferson, and it's like his Trinity's great, right? 9+ Trinity on the season. Little production. Now, what's the reasoning for that? Is that going to last? Obviously, McCarthy's making literally his first couple starts, so you don't expect him to absolutely take off. But at the same time, the beauty of the Trinity so far for Jefferson is there's nobody else. You look at the Trinity for the other players on the offense, they don't have anybody else above 4.5. So it's like he's getting used basically better than any receiver you can hope within his offense, and it hasn't really produced much. You're going to add Jordan Addison back in there, who he's not a world beater, but he's not a zero. You know what I mean? If he takes an extra 5% higher than what the next best option has been taking, where are you left with Jefferson? Now, we'll see. Stranger things have happened. I already said this earlier in voice chat, Brandon. What if Carson Wentz comes out, goes 303 tutties? And then it's man, the discussion starts becoming, wait, can everybody produce in this offense? Even Nick Mullins and Josh Dobbs, but not JJ McCarthy? I mean, You can just see the poetry of that happening, right? Wentz comes in, he wins 4 games in a row. And it's do we put JJ back in? This is the guy that's winning games, who's won games before, has started, 50+ games in the NFL. I don't know. I can just see that controversy brewing, but is it a hot take to say I don't think Jefferson or Chase can finish top 5? I don't think that's crazy. And that has nothing to do with their ability or their talent. It's just their situations are not as good as Puka. Now, if Puka lost Stafford, I'd put it in the same boat. You know what I mean? He's not going to do what he's been doing with Jimmy Garoppolo or Stetson Bennett. But for right now, all these other guys have just slightly better situations. So I think it's not crazy that you put those guys outside of your top 5. But what does that actually mean from actionability standpoint? Are you pivoting off Jamar Chase for Amon-Ra St. Brown? I mean, they're both probably still wide receiver 1s, even on their worst days. So it just doesn't feel like there's a lot of actionable maneuverability that you can use there unless you just really, really want to take a shot on somebody else. Who would you take over those two for the rest of the year? CD, we agree?
Yes.
Neighbors? Neighbors with Russ, but Neighbors could have a rookie quarterback here in 3 weeks.
Yeah, I'm not going to go all the way there.
Okay. Puka, as long as Stafford's there.
Puka. Amon-Ra.
So Puka and CD. Would you take Amon-Ra?
I would take as long as Goff is there. I think that week, if you're getting week 1, no, you don't feel good about it. But yesterday against the Bears, yeah, you feel a lot better about that Amon-Ra. You feel a lot better about that offense. They're not going to obviously play the Chicago Bears.
Is that probably the list? Are you ready to put JSN up there yet, or not quite?
No. Although JSN has produced quite a bit. I mean, his Trinity's up there, and he's definitely getting the elite usage.
Him and Puka are basically the top 2 receivers. So, it's not – I don't know. But the point is, it's not more than 5 or 6 you would take over them. Yeah.
The list is very slim.
They're both so good that, they're still – people are kind of shitting on Chase's numbers without Burrow in his career. It's 12.8 points per game. It's not going to kill you. You know what I mean? It's just not going to be 20 points per game. So
yeah, he's very rare. You're going to get the whatever he had yesterday. Those are going to be very rare games. You're probably going to get a lot of 7 for 80s with a touchdown, right? And that's still really good.
Yeah.
The guy that I'm thinking about, I guess the only other fringe guy I would consider, and he's playing tonight. Would you take Nico? I don't think so yet.
Who's who?
Nico. I don't think he could do it. I don't think he could do it, right?
Dude, he dudded in week 1, and then we will see. But like that's an offense where I mean, well, let's transition into the
Ray's
the
not
Burrow
worried about that,
conversation.
Chase.
Like what
Yeah.
what would it take for you to move off of Burrow in Dynasty? I said, and I don't think it's a hot take, that if you comfortably wanted to move him outside of your top 10 for rest of this season, I don't think that's crazy. But once you start getting lower than that, it's like you're taking on a lot of risk for what's not even guaranteed to be production. Steve-O says in the chat, Drake London. What do you think about that?
No.
You quite trust that Drake London yet?
You want to trust that Drake London after 2 weeks when Bijan's absolutely running wild and there's actually the rebirth of Kyle Pitts?
Yeah.
I'm good.
Okay.
I mean, Drake's good, but I'm not putting. Would you take Drake London over either one of those guys? No way.
No. Well, and here's the thing. We'll move on to the quarterbacks here in a second.
Yeah.
But the fickle nature of Dynasty is if you're trying to move Chase or Jefferson today, like the person buying is going like, yeah, sure, I'll give you Drake London. It'll be straight up. You're not getting any leverage on top of those guys. You know what I mean?
Might toss you my 28th first because I've got it.
Yeah, but you're not getting that.
Yeah, I know.
I'm saying that the seller of the guys you clearly would put ahead of these dudes is like they don't want to move their CD or their Amon-Ra or their neighbors. You know what I mean? Or their Puka. Right. But if you're saying I'll give you Chase for Puka, they're like, yeah, I still am uncomfortable doing that. So it's just it doesn't feel like a deal that's going to get done. So I don't know. It just feels like you got to ride them out. It just sucks. But literally, we said, how many of the answers did you give me? Dak, CD loses Dak. Oops. Amon-Ra loses Goff. Oops. Ugh. I mean, Puka loses Stafford. Oops. Like it could be for all of these guys. So it is what it is.
Let's talk about Burrow for a minute.
Well, here's where we started. I think we agree that the big four that were ahead of him coming into the season, you know, if you can get to one of them with him, you probably got to add at least a first, if not more now. Yep. And so that's probably not what I'm trying to do with my, like if I said here, Brandon, I'll give you Jalen Hurts, but you have to give me Burrow and your 26 and your 27 first. Do you want to pay that?
No.
Because it doesn't feel like you'd just rather address quarterback differently than have to just pump all of that capital into an injury replacement. So I'm not even thinking you're coming to the table with a deal that's going to get you Lamar or Allen or Hurts or Jaden, even though Jaden's probably a little banged up. Like you're not getting those four. I put, and I want to know your take on this, I put Mahomes and Herbert as close to the Burrow tier before this as you could have gotten. And now he's injured and they're not. It's like it feels like trying to go from Burrow to Mahomes or Herbert. You got to add a plus.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
one of those guys for him. So I'm not even trying to do that either. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Dynasty Daddy. Shout out to Jeremy and his team. Somebody traded today, Justin Herbert straight up for Joe Burrow. I love
Joe Burrow more than any player. If you can go to Mahomes or Herbert and you have to add a second, I'm doing that all day because those guys are just as good as him. Right. All of those guys have had, I think, 3 top 5 seasons or whatever it is. 2 top 5 seasons and a top 10 season. Like they're all similar. And we know how cyclical and hell, Mahomes is leading the damn league in rushing yards practically. So like maybe he is a rushing cheat code, but I'm not guessing on that continuing. But yeah, I'm paying a little tax to get to those guys. So I'm just assuming those are out. If I have Herbert, I'm not trying to get to Burrow. Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I'm good. Would you do Dak in a second for your Burrow?
I would take Burrow.
Okay.
I mean, I think the key is that those top 6 are out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to pay the first tax to go get one of those 6. I'll address the position differently. Who's in the next range, though? Who's in that range where it's like I'd pay Burrow and maybe a tiny tax to pivot to? Who is in that range for you? And they have to have
it's definitely going to be Mahomes.
Value, and not Herbert, not Mahomes.
Not Herbert, not Mahomes.
Production value, but a little dynasty sexiness too. It can't be Dak or T-Law. Like these guys that have been around for 5+ years, it can't be that. It has to be, I'm getting a little investment too. Who do you think? Bo Nix?
Bo. Yeah, I could do Bo.
Drake May?
Yeah, there's still an appeal with Drake.
Okay. Caleb.
No.
Caleb was one of the ones that a lot of the community agreed was in that mix, but he's looked terrible.
No.
Okay, so you don't have Caleb in there, but you have May and Nix. Jordan
Burrow?
Love.
There's people who like Love. There's also people who don't like Love. That's an interesting one. It depends on the market, but I could see Love.
Okay. Any others that come to mind for you? CJ Stroud?
No.
See, you don't care about the youth on that Stroud or Caleb, right?
No. It's like
they've got nothing to show you that they are going to help
I'd rather
right?
I'd rather Brock Purdy than those two. And I would rather just bite the bullet. But I think the point
Brandon's down bad. He's going to the other guy who's going to be out probably a month with a turf toe injury. He doesn't care. He's going there.
Would you do Baker? Is Baker in that same tier, or is that too far?
Okay, so I think the next tier is where you get into the T-Laws, the Daks, the Bakers, the guys that are a little bit older, they have a little rust on them, or people just don't love them. But if you told me, for as much discourse as we've seen with T-Law, he's still been decent for fantasy. And he's probably going to be in that offense. You know what I mean? Like, he's not going to be quarterback 20. So I think Dak, T-Law, Baker are the guys where you go, I'm losing the quote-unquote dynasty appeal, but I could get a top 12 quarterback back with those three. You know what I mean? What do you think? Yep. What do you have to add? What if the Burrow manager comes to you and says, you give me a second for one of those guys, and I'll give you Burrow? So it's like you said, Dak in a second, T-Law in a second, Baker in a second. Are you doing that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because here's the thing, and we had this conversation. If you are trading off of Burrow was probably your QB1, more than likely. I mean, unless you had like a completely super stacked team, right, where you had like a Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, but
and we'll get to that in a second, because if that's the case, you do not need to do this. If you
don't
have like Lamar and Burrow, you're dumb to go give away Burrow for nothing, or not nothing, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, you're having to basically reposition how your QB room looks on your dynasty squad, right? Like you are reconstructing it in a different way, because you've gone from having this elite quarterback with a bunch of QB2 like Geno Russ types to now you're like, I'm just going to swim in that entire pool. And so now I'm not going to have value in my quarterback room if you decide to go that direction, right? So now you have to you got to figure out what is the best of the non-movable quarterbacks. Because really, most people aren't just going to actively move their Dak and their Baker and their Goff. Nobody's going to give you a singular first for them, but they're more than a second. Right? Like they're just guys that are going to get constant production, but nobody's going to go and give you, Scott, 2 firsts for Baker Mayfield if he goes out and smashes tonight.
No. Well, and the reason a team would do that is because where did all those QBs start the season? They started they're all the same, right? If you had Baker or you had Dak or you had T-Law, you didn't care. You just needed one of those guys. All of them had their own appeal. Some had more value than others, but it kind of felt like if you had 2 of those guys, if you constructed a QB room and you went into the year and your QB room was Baker and T-Law, you felt fine. You know what I mean? You felt like I have 2 potential top 15 quarterbacks. Neither are going to be elite. Neither are going to absolutely explode in value, but they're steady. So you may, because that range was so flat, because there were so many guys in that range. I mean, there's more names we haven't even mentioned, but because there's so many names in that range, if you said, you know what, I do want to pivot to Burrow, because now this is my path to getting into a guy that maybe is in the tier above without really having to pay much, that's why you would do it. But at the same time, like the days of just, I got some Burrow offers today. I mean, people are just delusional thinking what you can get back for. I'm not adding a first to Kyler Murray to get Burrow. You know what I mean? Kyler's one of those other ones that's, I think, in the Dak, Baker, T-Law range. Like, he's probably going to give you some production. But, I'm not adding a first to get Burrow when my team's probably built around needing Kyler to be a little bit better than expected. It's a fickle position.
Let me ask you these ones before we move on. Would you trade Cam Ward for Joe Burrow?
Oh, my God, yes.
Okay. Would you trade Jackson Dart in a second for Joe Burrow?
Brandon. Come on.
I know.
We haven't even seen Jackson Dart play. Yes.
I know. Okay. I'm asking like, and I'm asking for, and here's, before I get flamed, here's the reason why is if I'm on a team that's completely done, like I'm completely out of it, right? Like let's take for example, the team that I have right now in the one league, right? I have an opportunity to utilize one of my young quarterbacks with a pick to go get an asset that could speed up a rebuild. Right? So if I can take one of those Jackson Dart, Cam Ward assets and toss a second and go get a Joe Burrow, I don't need the points. I really don't care, but I can utilize that to dangle to you.
Well,
like
that's a best ball, right?
Yeah, so that's a best ball, and that's a best ball.
In best ball, the volume of quarterbacks is more valuable and can also defeat the higher end quarterbacks easier than it could be in a lineup league, right? Because a lineup league, you only get 2 shots. You have to sit, start. Best ball, you can have 4 shots of, you don't even have to have a top 10 quarterback, and you can end up with a top 2 or 3 quarterback room in any given week, right? So there, I think you have more possibilities of being able to get a deal done. It's just, what are you willing to pivot to? Would you give up Cam Ward and Jackson Dart for Burrow in like a second? Would you do that? Would you do a 2-for-1 in a best ball?
I'd strongly consider it, but I think I'm with CC here. I think if I'm trading Burrow, I'm going to go to Daniel Jones. I'm going to go to Daniel Jones. And you know what? I was wrong on Daniel Jones. I will completely admit, all off season, Scott, you heard me. I was like, I'm not getting in on that train. I'm not getting in on it, but Daniel Jones looks pretty good in Indianapolis. He looks pretty good. For 2 weeks, they might have found their guy. They've been searching for darn near close to a decade since Andrew Luck retired. They've tried just about everything. They've tried non-mobile quarterbacks, mobile quarterbacks, big arm quarterbacks, noodle arm quarterbacks. They've tried everything. And Daniel Jones through 2 weeks looks pretty good.
Well, I mean, here's what's impressive. He's quarterback 2 in fantasy. He's top 10 in the league in passing efficiency, and he has 28 rushing yards. So, like, he's not doing this based on he does have 3 rushing touchdowns. I'll give him that. But he's not doing this on like, that was a fluke 2 games. Not saying he's going to be a top 10 quarterback, right? But clearly something's working. There is a fit there that, I compare this to when Geno Smith had his breakout year with the Seahawks and it came out of nowhere. You know what I mean? No one expected him to be a guy that's starting 4 years later. And that's another good one with Darnold. Like, something is working. There is a good fit there. And I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, we talked about this in voice chat earlier too. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if they rip off 4, 5, 6 wins in a row that you're looking up and Daniel Jones signs a 2-year, $80 million extension. And they just say, you know what, we're going to build the next year or 2 around him. And there's no long-term commitment. It's basically the same pocket of time you would have had to work with Richardson, either having to pay him or not. You know what I mean? It's just not the guy that you thought. So, and yeah, Ray makes a good point. Like, there's not looking like there's tons of answers next year that are clearly better than even like the Jackson Dart level options. So I think they do it. I think I could see him getting an extension if this continues. And as soon as he gets the extension, you're like, wait, that's Geno Smith with more upside. I'll pay a first for that. I'll pay a late first.
Yeah. Let's talk about running backs, because I know you love some running backs. Let's talk about what are the ones that are shocking you? What are the ones that stuck out to you yesterday? Or situations, maybe. I've got a couple written down. Maybe if we want to go that direction.
There were a few, obviously, like the Scattaboo and Tootin probably emerged as they're on the radar of startable guys in week 3 now, which is nice if you drafted them. Like, those were not first-round picks, but that's exactly why you draft those types of running backs in the second round, because all it takes is a little bit of a usage change and something to go in their favor to where, like, you can probably start those guys next week as flexes and you live with the results. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I think those are hits for sure. Judkins looked good.
He did.
Didn't necessarily produce, but you're like, you watching, you wouldn't have thought this is a dude that has not played football in almost a year. You know what I mean? Like, he came right in and you're like, he looked exactly like what he should have. And then, yeah, I mean, so those are my takeaways. Well, who'd you have?
The couple that I had, did have the Giants. I did have the Browns. I had the Cardinals. That's an interesting one, Scott. Right? Because we all thought that Trey Benson was going to take over, some part of the backfield last year. Never happened. And how this year he's slowly eating into that backfield. James Conner had a 65% snap share week 1. Yesterday, he only had 55%. Benson started to eat in on those 2-minute drives. I think there's definitely a role where you could see it's getting to be where I don't want to say it's 50-50, but it's very interesting. Like Trey Benson's one of those guys. I was looking at Dynasty Daddy, like he's still gettable. But something to definitely monitor over the rest of the season that James Conner has not been utilized like that true bell cow that we've come, to see the last few years out in Arizona.
Yeah, I think, and I see in the chat that Blake Corum only has, I think, 8 touches on the season. So it's not like it's a committee or a split. Benson has like 15 touches. So it's not like it's a 50-50 split or they're about to take over. This is not like Walker and Charbonnet in week 1. You know what I mean? But what it shows you is that's actually a realistic track for these running backs drafted outside of the first couple rounds. You know what I mean? To where they come in and all your, if you have a round 3, round 4, round 5 running back, Brandon, you know what the expectation is? At some point during their rookie deal, they have some standalone usage. And that can be a committee for their entire rookie contract. That can be a guy that doesn't really do much early on, but then has spurts throughout his rookie deal where he starts a handful of games. Or it could just be a guy that kind of works in and his role is a backup. But if you look at that, like that's the expectation track when you draft a guy in the 2nd round or even like early 3rd round of a rookie draft. The idea that a 3rd round running back, just based on what it looks like the day that it gets drafted, I'm speaking to like what the backfield looks like the day that it gets drafted. We need to stop with that guy's going to take over and just eat. You know what I mean? Now I see some Caleb Johnson chat, but like Caleb Johnson, it's only 2 weeks. If you expected him to come in and just start, you were ahead of your skis. And I think the problem was people pre-draft put Caleb Johnson where? He was with the big 5, right? He was up there as, man, he could be a top 50 pick. He could go early day 2. And then he didn't. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, he went to Pittsburgh. So everything was forgiven. But what if he's just Trey Benson? What if he doesn't actually have his first game? You can start him until like week 5 of 2026. That's not a disappointment if you drafted him where you did Trey Benson last year, like 203, 204. You took him at the 109, 108. That's where you're like, man, I don't feel good about that pick because you could have done something else with it. So I'm not giving up on Caleb, but like he might have a year where it's just like they have no plans for him other than if we need him, we'll throw him in there. But there is no wait till week 8 and he'll be starting. You know what I mean?
Yep. The other backfield that I had that I wanted to get your take on was the Patriots, because we've all kind of, we were all in on Hendo, and you look at that split and it is just an ugly 3-way mess from an opportunity standpoint, right? Like there's a lot of people who drafted Hendo and he was RB2, and now Antonio Gibson's still there and Ramondre Stevenson had a really nice game. Like, talk about the Patriots.
Well, I mean, again, I think if you're drafting these rookies where you do, and I'm speaking to Hendo, speaking to RJ Harvey, he's in the same boat. Caleb, I mean, you'd much rather have Harvey and Hendo over Caleb because at least they're on the field. They have a role, you know what I mean? But like, I think you're hoping that they have production in the back half of the season. You hope that in week 14, we're talking about Travion Henderson getting 17 opportunities. You know what I mean? And that's when he's helping you win weeks. The idea that it's just going to happen in week 2 and you can start him, like, sure, you can. I've started Hendo in a couple leagues. I've started Harvey in a couple leagues. And you know what? I did that on the speculation that the pop could happen at any time, which it could. So you want to catch that if it's in there, but you're also going to live with the weeks where it's like, yeah, they scored 5 points and you wonder, when is it going to get better? But it's just very interesting that if you have to pay really high prices, Brandon, and when I say high prices, like people were taking Hendo at 103, 104. Hell, a lot of us in the DD community, we were taking Harvey 105, 106. Like, you paid a lot. And I'm not saying that if you could go back that you would change it, because there weren't a ton of other guys. I mean, other than probably Igbuka and Tet, like it isn't like you're like, oh, I'd clearly rather have Jackson Dart, or I'd clearly rather have Tyler Warren. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't obvious, but at the same time, it just feels like, what are you doing with those picks? The way people play Dynasty today, it should be easier to backfill that running back production without having to use first in that way. And maybe we just kind of think a little bit harder at the profiles that we're buying into. It felt like this year's running back class, we just got so excited for some new names. Meanwhile, you go out and who is still smashing, Brandon? Kamara, Saquon, not Henry, but he's still there. Josh Jacobs, you know what I mean? It's just,
we've been waiting
a lot of the same guys.
We've been trying to kick that 2017 class out since 2022, and it just isn't happening.
Yep.
And I think just people, and I think, answering the question from Chasing Breakers, when do you think we could start attacking? It depends on what the cost is to acquire them, or because Scott, are you selling your Hendo? You're on a contender. Are you selling him for anything less than a late 26 first at this point?
I'm gonna flip it around, because I think he's saying, when are you going to attack those people that have them? Okay, Chasing Breakers and the rest of the chat. You were in a league where your running back room is fine. You've been getting by. You know what I mean? You've got like a Chuba Hubbard as your RB2. You have a few of those guys that maybe you can't play right now, but you got to expect somebody like Brian Robinson's going to have usage. Like, you have enough guys. You have a nicely built running back room, Brandon. You have a single 26 first and a single 27 first. Do you want to spend the 26 first right now on RJ Harvey, knowing that whenever I want to go get a Chuba, I can do it for less than a first? Now, I'm not saying when RJ Harvey pops off and he has 9 catches in a game and he starts getting 75% snap share, he's not worth a first. But today, in week 3, do you want to use your first on that right now? If I told you your league is going to basically allow you to buy running back production as you need it for less than those firsts, then I feel like that's not where I want to put my first round capital today. Even if I can buy low, I mean, maybe Hendo has a little bit more shine than Harvey, but it just feels like you still are even thinking about it. Like, man, I don't know if I just want to start sending picks when somebody's getting a little distraught that those guys aren't smashing. What do you think? Am I crazy?
I don't think you're crazy for not wanting to spend the first, especially when you have guys like Kamara still producing, still guys like Chuba, guys, I mean, I don't want to say,
and those guys are worth first. Don't get me wrong. They are worth firsts. They are worth first, because if Hendo came out next week and smashed, you could easily flip for more. So if you want to play that game, fine. I'm just talking about building your team, getting production at the running back room, especially as attrition happens. We've talked about these quarterback injuries, but there's going to be running back injuries that happen. There's going to be bye weeks that happen. There's going to be somebody that goes, oh man, I really, right now it might be hard to trade a guy like J.K. Dobbins. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people have a guy like that on their team. Wait until there's 10 running backs down in a given week. Whatever Dobbins is alive in week 11 is going to look pretty good. So just think about what you want to do with your assets. People might clip this and be like, oh, you're not paying a first for Henderson? Yes, I would. But in terms of attacking the production on my roster, I don't have to if I don't want to at this very time. That's all I mean.
And especially with running backs where there's so many of them, right? Like multiple teams are deploying 2, sometimes even 3, right? So we're talking the pool is anywhere from 60 to 90 potentially usable ones. And that's assuming none of them are fully hurt, right? With that pool will stretch out to 100, right? I could go to almost and I'm not saying like, oh, I would rather start RB 96 over Henderson. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you can find sometimes the useful production coming in off the waiver wire. Guys like Devin Singletary, we've completely thrown him away. But guess what happens if Cam Scadaboo's out? Like, Devin Singletary becomes potentially a spot where, you're looking for it. You're looking for production. And I would much rather go pick up Devin Singletary for free with, burn my fab dollars than go spend the first on whatever running back. So I think that's what you're trying to say, is that there's other ways that you could utilize those pick assets that just going straight 1 for 1. And I think, to the chats, if I can move Henderson into James Cook or get James Cook at a plus or Chuba Hubbard in a small plus, that's exactly what I would be trying to do. Like maybe that's the way you attack it, is if I've got that Henderson and, again, there's different ways to slice it. Everybody dynasty is a little bit different, but I think there are different ways to attack and approach this one. Scott, we got a few minutes left before we get into the doubleheader for Monday Night Football. Is Ibuka the real deal? Are we going to see that tonight? Are we going to see, or is he going to, let's rephrase that question. If Ibuka goes out and has another big night, let's just say 5 catches, 70 yards and a touchdown, how do you think the dynasty community is going to react tomorrow morning?
Well, it's the dynasty community, so they'll probably overreact to a degree. But yeah, I think he's a first-round pick. He was a good prospect. Look what he did in week 1. Forget about the touchdowns. Look how he was used. He immediately stepped into a role that had 2 all-pro level receivers last year. They drafted him, and he literally filled in. Like, Chris Godwin's not going to make the Hall of Fame, but he's been great for almost a decade. And he literally just stepped right into that role as a rookie in week 1 and won the game for him. Like, you don't just do that if you're not the quote-unquote real deal. But what does real deal mean? Like, if you told me he is wide receiver 9, I wouldn't call you crazy. If you told me he's wide receiver 15, I wouldn't call you crazy. The way the market trends upwards, like, obviously I'd rather have him over a lot of these other guys that are in the same range. Like, give me him over G. Will. Give me him over Marvin Harrison. Why? Because those guys, like, they're fine, but they're not the upward mobility asset that everybody has to have, and they have buyer's remorse if they don't. You know what I mean? But in terms of real deal, like, is he better than Drake London? Like, is he just better than Drake London? Is he just going to exceed Nico Collins? Is he just going to, fly by Brian Thomas Jr.? I mean, maybe that's an interesting one.
Maybe that might be an interesting one.
Is, like, yeah, I'm not going to put him in the top 5 after 2 games, but the dynasty community might. You might be going like, dude, give me Ibuka over Justin Jefferson. Like, you might hear somebody say that if he goes out and has 30 points tonight, but he probably settles right in that. Okay, he's wide receiver 8 to 16.
Yep.
And that's about as much as you could have hoped for a rookie. Then if we see him stack that production for the rest of the year, then you go into year 2. Like, okay, maybe I put him dynasty wide receiver 7, 8, 9, 10. But I think he's in that range with that next tier of guys. And until he shouldn't be in there, that's probably where he lives. And that's a massive hit, considering a lot of people took him 110, 111 in rookie drafts. To already have a guy in that range after 2 games, it's phenomenal.
Well, that'll do it for week 2, the dynasty takeaways. So I want to thank Scott for coming on. We're going to try to do this. We're going to do this every Monday night. We're going to kind of come in right before the game. Every week we'll be here. Scott, tell the people where they can find you, what you're going to be up to this week.
Yeah, so a lot going on. You can see where to find our community, patreon.com/allgas, ddfantasyfootball.com. Both of those get you in the door. Any questions about what you get with those, let me know. Reach out to any of the DD creators. We should be able to help you out with that. But more importantly, they just get you inside the Discord. That's where the conversation is. If you want to join the Heisman, once you get in there, that's where you're going to get a lot of these discussions, hang out with us, hang out with Ray, all the other creators. Like, that's where we're hanging out pretty much every day. So check that out. A lot of content. I mean, our weekly content schedule is not going to stop. Tuesdays, we have Trinity Tuesdays. Ray and I will be live probably sometime tomorrow doing the Trinity show. That is for members only. If you want that early. So if you want that before your waivers, before things end, getting into like Wednesday, Thursday to the next week, become a member, Trade and Chill tier. It's $3.99 a month on YouTube. You have Dynasty Theory. You have Mannequin Chill. We have Dynasty Deal Show. We have your mailbag show is going to come back on Saturday. All Gas Trade Show on Saturday. Like, it's nonstop content all week. And then obviously that's just our channel. Ray has his own channel with Wake Up and some of the prospect videos that he puts out. Like, it's nonstop content. So just check us out. Thank you for tuning in tonight, and good first show, Brandon.
Thank you. Well, for the 1,000 people that are actually watching us tonight, thank you. Make sure you like, subscribe to the page, and we'll see you next week. We're out.
Appreciate you.